Power, Sex, and Suicide. The Mitochondrial and the Meaning of Life. This book was actually introduced to me when I was an undergrad. I did a undergrad class called The Ecology and Evolution of Vertebrates. And it was probably one of the most influential college classes that I've ever taken in my life. The professor, Joe Williams, he introduced this book, Oxygen, the Molecule That Made the World, and this author, Nick Lane, to me at the time. I believe I read some of Nick Lane's stuff maybe when I was in high school, because of something my brother had, but I wasn't really introduced to it until this point. Um, yeah, so the idea of how important mitochondria is in our systems is becoming more and more apparent. And I'm going to talk a lot about that in today's topic of how mitochondria affects our musculoskeletal system with musculoskeletal health, osteoarthritis, maybe chronic pain, and some other things. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Nikhil Verma. I'm an interventional pain and regenerative medicine specialist in Columbus, Ohio. I have a fascination with musculoskeletal health, and this is my YouTube channel called Things I Didn't Learn in Med School. Yeah, so I mean, that's a good jumping off point because this is something that we didn't really learn in med school. We learned about mitochondria, but we didn't learn the real deep down importance of how it's such an important energetic system. Most people out there know mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. You might even remember your biology class knowing it as a currency, the energy currency that we use with ATP. But as we go deeper and deeper into the science, we're starting to understand the nuances of how important mitochondria is. There's a subset of physicians, researchers, theorists out there that believe most chronic conditions are related to mitochondrial dysfunction. That's not the world's worst theory out there. And as we go through this, I hope I make that more apparent to all of you out there. So, just quickly, um, this is just a quick Google search, and of course, this is AI generated overview, but they're pulling off some good studies. Says the mitochondrial dysfunction directly impairs the musculoskeletal system in the tissue and the recovery by lowering cellular energy and increasing oxidative stress. That makes sense, right? If we're not getting the energy to heal tissue, then we're not going to have good outcomes. And if these mitochondria become dysfunctional over time, then we're going to have worse pain outcomes, what I like to call a poor environment for healing and chronic inflammatory markers. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, especially when we're talking about the fascinating studies that are showing when we use mesenchymal stem cells, there is tubular transfer of mitochondrial types to make some mitochondria more active. And it's a really interesting phenomenon that has to do with the M1 and M2 macrophages that come into the area. This has been shown in more of the bench work and maybe not necessarily in vivo in people in animal studies, but we are really, really starting to understand how this might work. Some of the ideas of how energy deposition will influence injury and repair. The regeneration of damaged muscle and joint tissue demands a high amount of ATP. So if the mitochondria is not functioning well, that's going to cause a problem. We have the cell membrane repair, the calcium influx, reaction of oxidative species. The reactive oxygen species can cause a lot of damage to areas, and they kind of wreak havoc. They don't allow a healing environment always. Immune crosstalk. Post-injury inflammation creates a feedback loop that worsens mitochondrial stress and stalls functional recovery. Mitochondria is so important in our system that it keeps all of our organs going, keeps our whole body going with that energy, that currency that I was talking about earlier. So you can just imagine how the poor cellular energy slows down the satellite cells and the muscle cells and activates the tissue remodeling, as it says here. So this is also what's interesting. If you've seen some of my other lectures or what I'm talking about in the Ohio Interventional Pain Society meeting coming up, is how MLS laser actually helps activate mitochondria, because there is a cytochrome. It's a factor in the mitochondria that actually absorbs red light and near infrared light to activate and make that more efficiency, and it actually decreases your reaction oxygen species because of that. For those that are interested, it's cytochrome 4. And yeah, so it's all kind of coming together, right? This whole picture of musculoskeletal healing. One thing I should say with caveat is those red lights that we get online or maybe at a store, the face masks, the hair ones, those are a little bit different. They work on the same mechanism, but they don't get deep enough to help the musculoskeletal system, but they may help hit the more superficial layers and have a similar effect, because again, mitochondria is everywhere. It's in every cell of the body. So it's going to absorb that light and it's going to have some sort of reaction. Now, I can't say how much that is. There's not really good studies, but anecdotally, there's a lot of people saying that really works. This is another topic of how our even skin cells, or maybe even the cells in our eyes, receive infrared and near infrared, and why it may be a disservice to us of why we're using LED lights all the time and not the incandescent lights that we might have, or maybe even having a red light, or as the mainstream popular science is going right now, is getting outdoors in those early morning hours from 6 a.m. till 9, 10 a.m. to get that wavelength of light that's not blocked out once the sun gets a little bit higher. Also later at night to get that same thing. When the sun is lower on the horizon, you get more of those wavelengths. So how much of this is all related to our healing, but also our sleep cycles and how we may respond to stress? I mean, it's a very fascinating field, and we don't know why, but we're trying to figure it out. And that's kind of what this whole topic is about today. So here's one study of just talking about how mitochondria and cytokine crosstalk following injuries. It's a mini review. This was published in 2021 in February, and they're talking just about this, like the cytokines modulate mitochondrial function and execute different roles and aid in functional recovery. When it's mitochondria is not functioning well and chronically disrupt, the healing is exacerbated by mitochondrial dysfunction as well. This disruption of healing is. So we have almost opposing roles. When mitochondria is healthy and functioning well, then great, it's going to work great. But when we have ill people, we have mitochondria that's dysfunction. A lot of these chemotherapy treatments or maybe some other medications can actually decrease our mitochondrial function. It causes us to be in this chronic inflammatory state or this chronic poor mitochondrial state, which could cause other issues down the road. Just another study about how this can lead to chronic inflammation. This was published in June of 2024 in Cell and Bioscience. Just another thing, another one I'm just trying to make a little bit more clear to you. And you can kind of see some of the pathways here of how that might look. Damaged mitochondria, healthy mitochondria. I'll get a little bit more into that here in a little bit. So this kind of brings me to a very, very interesting and someone I would like to say as a online friend is Dr. Stephen Murphy, who is a brilliant physician who has a very healthy obsession with how mitochondrial function in the body. If you don't already, I recommend you following him on LinkedIn, on X, Instagram. Also, his Substack is fantastic. He talks a lot about these kind of things. He and I have had some good discussions in how this treats our musculoskeletal disorders. He gave a talk last night. Today is July 31st. So he gave a talk last night on July 30th about this concept of how mitochondria affects the cells in the joints and how arthritis may actually be a mitochondrial dysfunction disease or disorder. I did not have an opportunity to be on that call last night, but I am looking forward to seeing the recording once it comes up. But of course, I have access to Dr. Murphy. He and I talk frequently, so I'm going to definitely pick his brain a little bit more about this. Um, and he says a great point here is this: the shift in perspective change of how we think about injections, rehabilitation. The next decade of orthopedics may not belong to biologics alone, but also bioenergetics. And that's the idea, the energy of the cells. Hence why the laser is very interesting to me. Other things like shockwave also increases the energy in the system. Things like electromagnetic therapies can also increase the energy. And the other idea are supplements. He has a supplement here called Urolithin A, which is a fantastic supplement. I talk a lot about the supplement protocol that I would recommend. And on my Substack, Essentials of Healing, there's this idea that people get caught up in the buzzwords of what's out there. And this might look something like NAD plus. So I get asked probably once a month, once a week, if not more, what are your thoughts on NAD plus? Well, NAD plus is a cofactor in the mitochondrial chain, but the idea is it's not enough. Here's a lot more complex. If you can see where all these complexes are: complex 1, complex 3, complex 4, and each of these have very, very complex cofactors, et cetera, go into it. Um, Here's a little bit more into that of how things work. And, we're talking about what are the different protocols that we can put in, what are the different cofactors we can put in. And, this is just some of it. And I'm going to make a longer and more intensive talk about this. My theory about it is, and what I've been reading is, you need to first out clear off some of the old cells that are in there. And then you need to start enhancing each part of the pathway. And my idea is you need to go through cycles of this and not just do it. Here's another one that's a little bit more in detail. Not just do it just because you're doing something, right? Just because, oh, someone said methylene blue is going to be helpful, so I should take methylene blue. Oh, I should add an NAD plus. If you're doing it without the guidance of someone that knows what they're talking about, you're just burning money. You're not really doing what's necessary to heal properly. Um, so here is kind of a protocol that I've put together with the help of AI and some other physicians that I talk with. Dr. Otero up in Michigan and Dr. Ken Smith down, and I think he's in Arkansas. Um, what's not important are the phases. I think you can start any point of the phase cycle, but the idea is just this: you can do several of these things at once for the biogenesis, the mitophagy. That's actually the killing of the old cells and then bringing on the new cells. Efficiency and recovery. Um, this is actually just scratching the surface. So I don't want to say that I'm an expert in this right now or I know too much, but my thought process is this may be a better way to heal our mitochondria than just kind of injecting ourselves with NAD plus or taking NMN or NMR from a supplement factory and then hitting in some SS31, a peptide, or a MOTS peptide. This is more of a comprehensive package of how to get that mitochondria to do what we need it to do for us to heal better. I've been thinking so much about this. I have a few patients in my office that I'm going to recommend these protocols to. Now, obviously, the peptides is a gray space, but if you look throughout this concept, not a lot of these things are very difficult to access or very difficult to do. So I think we may be onto something when we do this in this specific order. And now, don't get me wrong, this might be outdated. I might need to go back and look at everything again and see, hey, I'm really was way off about this. But this is also another reason why people will take certain supplements and they're like, hey, I'm not getting any better. If you're adding fuel to a dysfunctional mitochondria already, you're actually going to be burning that mitochondria out before it can do its job. So you're not going to get better in that sense. And that's why I'm very, very bullish on all of this and how um, entropy and homeostasis and it all works with the energy. So that is what I want to talk about today. I hope you guys found it useful. And if you do have any questions about this or any thoughts about this, I'm happy to talk about it. Again, recommend highly to follow Dr. Stephen Murphy. He's a great physician, definitely on the cutting edge of these things. And I think this is what people in the longevity field are going to be talking about in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot more than these peptides and even orthobiologics. Like if our mitochondrial function is not great, are we actually doing what's necessarily best for the bodies? Um, yeah. So I hope you guys found it useful. Please like, please share, please subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below and we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye.